Hey there, and welcome back to the Dream Practice Podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Chard, and today I have our creative director, Diego Aguirre, with us. We're going to be talking about design today. We've all seen law firm websites that look like they were designed in 2005, but sometimes the sites that look the most modern are the ones that are failing the hardest. So design isn't just about your logo, or your color, or stock images. It's about this sort of silent conversation that you're having with a potential client before they ever pick up the phone. Diego is a designer, an artist, a mentor, and a deep thinker on both life and design. We've had a lot of fun conversations over the years. And today, we're going to dig into the quiet killers, those subtle design mistakes that subconsciously tell your best clients and leads to hit the back button and go to a competitor instead. So, Diego, welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited. Looking forward to digging into
Yeah.
this.
So let's get into sort of this, I don't know, let's call it the philosophy on first impressions. You are involved with our clients at like the very outset of their projects, talking with them about their brand and their vision for everything. And then you sort of formulate the sort of initial wireframe and get these ideas down on the page. What are the things that are most on your mind when you're first digging into the design for a brand or a website?
I think every website is a little bit of a dance between the preferences of that one particular client of ours. Every single lawyer comes to the table with certain preferences, certain things that they want to achieve aesthetically. Some don't have any preferences at all. And then the dance is between that and what the audience actually needs, what their audience actually needs. So when I connect with a client initially, it's all about trying to extract as many of those pieces of data on their particular preferences that they might have, on what the actual needs of the audience are going to be, and then figuring out how we can kind of like marry those two aspects to make sure that the website is as much as of a reflection of them and their practice and their personality, even as an attorney, as it is a tool that will actually convert for the audience, and that will give the audience what they're actually looking for. So that's kind of like the balance that I'm always trying to strike when I'm first connecting with a client in our
All
process.
right, awesome. Yeah. And I imagine that you talk about the dance is a good, I think, metaphor, because I'm sure our clients experience that as well when they're working with their own clients, and that client might come in with a lot of
Hmm.
ideas about how they want things to go. And the lawyer has to
Oh
sort of
yeah.
say, no, this is, it's, there's going to be some other things to consider. And so, and yeah, so I imagine a lot of conversations with our clients about, again, things that they want versus what the market or the audience may actually need.
Yeah, absolutely, and so much of it is subjective. I think a lot of our clients come into things with uh, pretty strong opinions about what will work and what doesn't, just based off of how they behave online themselves as consumers of online content. And of course, that is never going to be representative of the entirety, or the general population, even, right? We all have quirks and we have preferences. Some of us love to see very visual heavy websites. Other people are very matter of fact and just want to get down to the very specific information that they're there to consume. Some people feel very comfortable getting a phone call going right off the bat from a website. Some people feel that's intimidating and they prefer to send a message and put that kind of like padding in between that initial contact. So everybody behaves differently. And I think that is a big hurdle to overcome. It's how do we educate our clients to try to see the website as a product that is not actually made for them, even though it is representing them. And that is part of that
Yeah.
dance.
So, well, unpacking that, there's a lot of, I guess, sort of quiet or sort of secret conversation going on, with the design and the setup of the website and the people who are, consuming it. And so we've sort of talked about this concept of like invisible design, and that just like when things are working perfectly, the user shouldn't even notice it. And now you've talked about how these users all have different ways of, interacting with the site and their own preferences. So help me dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's I think the concept of design being 99% invisible, which is like that phrase that really stuck with me throughout the years, It's really all about being able to work in as much functionality and as much user experience thinking so that the person is being guided, that the person is being kind of ushered through the content on the website. But those elements that are guiding them should be imperceptible enough that none of them scream out to the person and distract them from the actual flow. And that requires, quite a bit of thinking. So a lot of clients will come in, for example, and they want to include many elements of detail and personality. Maybe they want to, include a ton of imagery on there. We've had clients that have come to us with a library of caricatures that they purchased at some point along the way, and they wanted to include these images in the website. Other clients who, wanted to include little cartoon characters, scribbled out to represent all of their practice areas on the website. And so it's, how do we include those things without them becoming distracting? I think is one of the biggest challenges. And so, good design is a real balance between refinement and being able to deliver on all those must-haves or all those wishes that the client has on what they want to include on the website. And so there's many ways of achieving it. You can include an element, and I tell this to our design team all the time. Just because a client requested to include X or Y photo because it matters a lot to them, it doesn't mean that you have to include that photo and that thing has to be the central thing that is commanding attention on a particular layout. You can treat that photo in different ways when it comes to color, right? You can reduce the level of vibrancy. You can turn it into a monochromatic image that now is only playing with two colors instead of a full spectrum of colors. As soon as you take a step like that, you're taking an image that could be very distracting, and you're turning it into something that is functioning more in the background, but it's still there. It's still present. We're still delivering on that request from the client, but the design element is now moving more into the background rather than the foreground and not becoming a distraction. So there are many techniques that we can use, but that refinement is really important to make sure that the website is easy to consume as an end product.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about, like you say, again, let's go back to the sort of dance metaphor and like the clients coming in with a real heavy foot, on some ideas they may have, and that can create some friction in the design, like you're saying. The client might have an idea that they know they want to incorporate, but that's going to create a bump in the process. So what are some, you just touched on a little bit with, say, an example of a personal photo that they want to include, but what are some common design elements that you see attorneys that they love, but actually make, create some friction on the site? And especially since, a lot of legal clients are already in kind of a high stress situation. So what are some of these situations you've encountered?
I think a lot of clients feel the need to overstuff a website. It's almost like a FOMO type of thing where they feel like if I don't include, all of these photos, like a lot of clients, for example, will have full-on photo shoots before the website goes live. And obviously a lot of those photos will make it onto the website. And they paid for these photos. So it's an investment and they want to put all those photos to use if possible. So, a client might say, for example, instead of showing practice area imagery, like stock imagery that is related to a particular practice area, I just want to use photos of, my team or different photos that we captured during that photo shoot throughout the entire page. Or on more generic pages, like, the contact page or perhaps like the testimonials page or the FAQ page, they might want to stuff a photo up there just because it's there and they want to use it. And so a lot of times it becomes a need to educate clients on where and when to kind of pick those battles. You don't have to use a thing just because it's available. It's okay to maybe swap out a photo down the road and you're still giving that photo, use at some point in the history and the life cycle of the website. But just because it's there, it doesn't mean that we have to use it, and it doesn't mean that we have to use all of it. So a lot of times education is required, conversation with the client on just to let them see kind of like all these possibilities on how things can be used at some point. But trying to keep the user experience of the website as uncluttered and clean as possible, and still trying to deliver on those aesthetic preferences that they might have. Some other clients have content and resources that they've created. Maybe they've got ebooks that they have. Maybe they have a podcast that they want to feature. And so it becomes this struggle for a lot of our clients on how many things they want to feature all on one page, right? The homepage is one that can very quickly suffer from being overstuffed with a lot of sections. And you're really competing with time. You've got seconds to capture an audience's attention, and for them to make a decision on how to route themselves. Just like our clients experience decision paralysis, their clients do as well, or their potential clients do as well. And so it's very easy to land on a website, and if I'm seeing 15 photos and sign up for the podcast, sign up for the newsletter, here's my blog feed, contact form, phone number, CTA section, all within halfway down the homepage, there is such a thing as overwhelm, where a person will simply hop off the page and say, this is just too much, And so those are things that require that education that I just mentioned. Explaining, having the patience to kind of talk through can save a lot of heartache and back and forth further down in the process. And I think in the vast majority of cases, our clients appreciate that time being dedicated to give the why behind certain things that we don't want to overuse or overstuff the website with.
Right. Well, a lot of what you talk about is, like in those examples there, is the attorney or the firm wanting to sort of say, me. I can do this. I am great. I have this background, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, though, it's really more about like them seeing the client, right, and understanding their problem. And I can handle this situation for you. I've been there before. And sometimes, right, like say on the practice area pages, maybe it isn't more photos of you that should be there. Maybe it should be more photos and supporting artwork to show the sort of the empathy and that you're connecting with their problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really is just a thing of how do you communicate the idea that ultimately this is not targeting you,
right?
As much as you should be pleased with the final result, there are going to be aspects of this thing that we're building together that are not at all meant to speak to you, to please you, that are truly meant to be functional areas, functional parts of the website that somebody else is going to get something out of. And that requires tact. A lot of, again, especially in like high stress moments, right, where a lot of these clients might be in a very particular stage of their legal career, where they might be leaving a big firm and launching off on their own for the first time. There is a sense of urgency and momentum that we have to take into consideration, but a lot of times that pause really is necessary just to educate and to give a little bit of information. And when they allow us to kind of connect with them at that level, the vast majority of them feel very kind of fluid through the rest of the process, because now they understand that the user experience that we're crafting, it's in good hands, right? We know what we're doing. We have done this before. We know what will work for particular audiences, and they can just trust. So if that pause can happen, that education can happen, I think it can go a long way towards saving time.
Yeah, awesome. Diego, let's dive a bit. You mentioned that the homepage is one of the areas that can like suffer the most by just sort of this, I don't know, decision fatigue or just too many things coming at you, with all the different sections. But let's go into even more specific, that first impression. It's it's sort of the hero image, or that opening when you go to the homepage and it's the first thing you see. Usually this is a large graphic, some text or tagline, maybe a video. Sort of that, it's that prime real estate. What are mistakes you see clients make in this area, and sort of what's your approach to it?
Well, the overstuffing of elements is a real concern there, right? The hero section of a homepage, and again, the hero section of a homepage is that part that is meant to create a nice first impression You're trying to not dump your website visitors straight into a body of copy where, they're presented with a ton of information right off the bat. It's an opportunity to deliver a brand promise, right? Your firm, your law firm is a brand, and it speaks to audiences in some way with visuals, with written content. It is constantly communicating some kind of message. And so the opportunity to use the hero section to be kind of a brand introduction is a huge one. And so how many elements we include up there? There have been clients, especially with website rebuilds or websites that are migrating with existing content, established SEO history, with a ton of elements up there, right? Some clients have, like, up in the header area, they might have multiple contact information points. They might have a translation button. They might have a tagline coupled with a paragraph. They might have a button, a call to action, maybe even the contact form up there. Like, there's a recent client right off the top of my mind, that had all of these elements all in the hero section before you ever scrolled anywhere on the homepage. And so the job of reallocating these elements, making sure that SEO value is not lost, are all things that we have to take into consideration. But the ultimate goal is to turn that section of the hero area into a clean, easy introduction to the brand overall. Bold imagery is usually something that helps quite a bit there. If it's going to be photography, how are we presenting it? What is the level of space that the photography has available for us to play with? What is the subject, and what imagery is being used to convey what message? You can, go with a symbolic direction up there in that hero section, trying, to convey a particular visual idea in a clever way, and that can resonate with a lot of people. Going with introducing the attorney or the team itself visually is huge. You can't go wrong with that, right? Providing kind of like a human welcome onto the website, getting a preview of who you might be doing business with. That can always, go very, very far with audiences. You can focus on locations, landmarks that will connect, at a local level with the audience. You can go with stock imagery that if it's carefully selected, it can represent the audience or what the audience is going through, connect more at an emotional level, maybe with people. So it's akin to a billboard on the highway, right? When you drive by, you've got seconds of time before you pass that billboard, and that's it. Whatever was written on there, whatever visuals were on there, they're lost, they're in your rear view. So you got to use those seconds as wisely as possible, make the imagery impact, and create a strong first impression as quickly as possible before that person's attention passes them in the highway of digital distractions and stuff. So really important thing to strategize and to do well. And if it's put in the hands of creatives who know what they're doing, it can go a long way towards being that strong first impression for the brand.
That's a great analogy with the billboard. I was just in Las Vegas visiting family, and talk about a place that's got a lot of lawyer billboards. And it is one of my favorite things to do when I visit a new place, is to check out the lawyer billboards and see who's got the font right and wrong, and who's stuffing too much information onto it. So
Before working at the Modern Firm, I never paid as much attention as I do now to lawyer billboards on highways. It's incredible. Here in Tampa, it happened that after about 2 years ago, I started noticing that this one lawyer who is really strong at advertising locally on billboards and bus benches and stuff, he started using this layout where his photo was kind of in the middle, and then he had two bits of copy on either side. And suddenly, within months, every lawyer billboard in Tampa was structured the same way: photo in the middle, text on both sides. So it's been interesting to see the evolution of billboards.
Trendsetter there. So let's dip a bit into, you mentioned at towards the end of that, on the hero image, the use of stock photography, but you were careful to say the careful use of stock photography. That is a common thing that we'll see on lawyer websites, right? I mean, I love to joke with clients about, like, we'll just, we'll throw a dancing gavel on it and just, have it just jump across the screen. But, there's good stock photography, there's bad stock photography. How what sort of goes into that process? Because it can definitely it can hurt the credibility of the brand if it's the wrong image, but also um, it's sometimes it is oftentimes the most practical way to get good supporting artwork for design. So what goes into the decision making there with stock photos and avoiding that kind of like ick feeling.
Yeah, when it comes to stock imagery, selection is such an important part, and I mean, incredibly enough, even though it's as abundant as it is nowadays, right? Where so many photo websites, even free ones, are offering so many options. It's still one of the steps in the design process that takes the longest, because the last thing that you want to do, like, there's this one stock image, for example, of a girl with curly hair wearing a yellow shirt that I have seen in so many websites, in so many social media posts, and in so many things on Reddit. Like, it is an image that is overused because it's extremely attractive. It has great contrast, the yellow and all that stuff with the background. Like, it's a very attractive image, and that is, I think, one of the biggest traps when looking for stock imagery. It's allowing yourself to go for the obvious attractive stuff without digging through deeper into those searches. We use a very specific approach to loading keywords. We use the filters heavily when we're looking for stock imagery. We look for certain kinds of framing. And you have to also be able to envision, like, this photo right here, thanks to things, to AI advances in design software. You need to be able to envision, I could use this thing, I just need to add more background to it, whatever it may be. But the most important thing is trying to look for originality. What image can I select, or what can I do to an image? Even if someone else is going to use that image, which I know someone else will, someone else has the same access that I have to that stock site. What can I do to that image to make it now unique for our client? And just like I was talking about before, there are many things that you can do regarding color. There are many things that you can do with crop levels. There are things that I can do to make an image feel like, even if it's appearing somewhere else out in the world, it's still unique in the setting and in the context of this one website. And then, of course, comes the idea of categories, right? We break things down for our clients, and then we offer a little bit of education on the different kinds of options that we have for representing things like practice areas. So we let them know we can go with photos that include people and that don't shy away from showing people's facial expressions, because humans are hardwired to pay attention to facial expressions. As soon as there's a face emoting something, we pay attention to that. It's just how we're wired. Or we can include photos that are more situational, where we have people involved, but it's far away removed enough that you're more focused on what's happening as opposed to expressions, which can distract. But then we could remove people altogether and focus on object-based stock imagery, where I don't have to have necessarily a person in handcuffs getting arrested to demonstrate criminal defense for DUI offenses, right? I can have something as simple as a nice, sophisticated looking glass of whiskey with some keys next to it on a surface that paints a picture, right? So for clients who don't want to go with the very obvious and overused directions for a photo like that, we can represent it in different ways. And then we can do away with photography altogether, use iconography to represent practice areas, and that provides a whole different vibe, a whole different feel for the website. So it really is full of nuances. And the search, I would say, I have a philosophy, that I adhere to, which is measure twice, cut once. If I spend the right amount of time finding the right amount of imagery that gives me the thing that I need to end up with a nice and unique look and feel for this website, it's going to save time in the end. So that search is such an important part of our process.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, no, like I said, the ton goes into getting those just right. You talk about how humans are hardwired sort of to react to facial expressions and other looking at other people. But another thing that we're also pretty hardwired towards is our reactions to colors, and the emotional responses that you can get from colors. And now we are also really dealing with some pretty, depending on the law, the practice area, some pretty emotionally charged situations. So can you talk a little bit more about like color palette selection? And again, let's get back to that dance a little bit, because sometimes law firms come in with some ideas about what they want, but maybe super bold red isn't the right choice for the loving, caring message that they're trying to give. So talk about that a little bit.
Oh man, when it comes to colors, and making a selection of colors for a website in particular, and for a website that's going to speak and cater to a particular audience that is experiencing some sort of situation in their life that is bringing them to that website, there's clearly a problem they need to solve. So there's some kind of emotional state. Colors can heighten that emotional state. They can counter that emotional state, right? If it's something that you want to do, if you're coming in with stress, you're in the middle of pending divorce, you're thinking child custody issues, you're thinking child support issues, where's the kid going to live, what's the split of custody, all that kind of stress, you don't want to land on a website that has a color that is going to trigger more alarming feelings, right? Like red that you mentioned. Red is a color that is we react to very viscerally. It's a color that means alarm, danger. It's a color that is associated with things like blood, right? And blood isn't something that we view on the regular, unless there's something going on, that is of some concern usually. The color yellow is a color of alarm, of caution. We see it all around our roads as we're driving around, and it's a color that's selected because it stands out. It's pretty visible in different light settings and that sort of thing. So you don't want to overfill that website with colors that denote caution or danger when you know that person is already very acquainted with those feelings. That's exactly why they're landing on there. So maybe you want to lean more towards softer colors. Maybe you want to lean more towards, your blues, your greens, colors that are a lot more associated with calmness and with tranquility. You want them to feel like they have just entered a safe space, somewhere where there's somebody there who is understanding of their situation and who is going to bring the calm in the middle of the storm kind of thing. So color selection is really, really important. And then there's also the fact that just because a client has a strong preference for one particular color, it doesn't mean that color has to dominate the entire layout or design, right? So if a client is very fixated on a set color, maybe they come to us with an already established brand, and it has an established color palette, and we have to work with it. Something as simple, for instance, as how I'm using that color for buttons throughout the website. So if you can imagine a button on like a contact form or something, if the client needs to use a red color, yes, we can include it there, but it doesn't mean that the color red has to fill the entire button. We could opt for what are known as ghost buttons, which are buttons that delineate the shape with a thin outline and has a transparent background. The color is still there. It's still making a part of their brand. It's still being representative of the brand's color palette, but it's not dominating, right? And we might not use that color for the full background of a contact form, right? Because that occupies a lot of space. We might not overlay any images in that color because we don't want to, again, cause that kind of alarming vibe by overusing the red. And there's another option when we have the chance to build a color palette for a client. Maybe because we're designing a logo from scratch for them. Red is not one thing, There's a whole spectrum of reds. For design nerds, or people who care about design, there's a spectrum that goes in multiple directions. One of them that controls the hue, which is the actual color, right? You move from yellow to orange to red, whatever. Then there you got brightness levels, which can make the difference between a pink color and primary red color. And then you've got your saturation levels, which can make a difference between a pastel color and a more fully saturated color. So what red is very subjective, and it is absolutely on a spectrum. So we have the ability to present a client with enough variations of something like the color red where they can still get what they want, right? They can still get that color involved in their color palette, but it doesn't have to be a version of it that is alarming in any sort of way. So there are many options to tackle color when you know what you're doing, for sure.
Let's go to this concept you were talking about earlier of a tendency of firms and lawyers to want to sort of stuff information in. And let's look at the opposite direction of that, white space. It seems like you're saying like a lot of attorneys are kind of afraid of empty space on their site. But how is white space actually useful and beneficial in in design?
The best way for me to explain how white space is useful for design and what it can achieve is by comparing it to the use of white space or empty space in any space that we walk into, right? If you walk into somebody's home, like for example, I walked into someone's home years ago who had a kind of a mental preference for having everything very saturated with stuff, with things. It wasn't necessarily, like a hoarder kind of situation. It was simply just a need for having every single piece of white space accounted for or filled with something. And that is something that gave that person a sense of peace. They made them feel, secure and grounded. For the vast majority of people, that might not be the case, right? You walk into a place and if you see every single bit of white space, that computes as clutter. It computes as too much overstimulation. I don't know where to look. I don't know what to pay attention to in this place, in this room. We saw the advent of feng shui redecoration and minimalism techniques, right? With several shows on Netflix and other streaming services focused on that. There is a psychology to that. When you walk into a room and there is generous amounts of white space, it becomes a lot easier for you to appreciate certain sections of the decoration, of the decor. It allows you to understand, there's the living room, there's the kitchen, there's that nice little nook where they've got that library with the record player. Clearly that's meant for relaxing. Taking it back to websites, it's very similar, right? When you're landing on a website, it's like you're walking into a room. And so the question becomes, are things distributed enough? Is there enough breathing room in the space that I have now walked into on this website? Is there enough breathing room for me to be able to very clearly understand where I can get certain information, where I can take certain kinds of actions, how I can move through this space in an effective way to get to where I'm wanting to get? And so that in itself also has levels, right? A lot of clients want to push towards more space. And so they want to give maybe an experience where as people are scrolling down, they're kind of seeing one section at a time. They're not being distracted or cluttered with any other sections. And that's perfectly acceptable. And then some clients want to go in the opposite direction. They want to minimize space as much as possible. And that's probably where we have to start pushing back a little bit. And again, bringing back that element of education. They might feel, just like this person whose house I walked into years ago, they might feel like that feels right to them. And so it's important to educate and remind them that this is ultimately not a product made for them. It is a product made for an audience. And the vast majority of audiences will feel the sense of overwhelm. If everything is cluttered, if everything feels like it has very tight spacing and padding, we need some breathing room to be able to clearly identify hierarchy in a design and to know what I can do and how easily I can do it. So again, education is needed, but spacing plays a huge role in design.
So Diego, I just have one more question for you, and this is for the listeners out there who are looking at their site and they feel like, all right, I've just heard all this information from you, but I'm looking at my site and it seems just fine. It's like it seems like it's working for me. I feel okay about it. How should I go about critiquing it to see if it is time for some small or even major changes? What are the sort of questions I should be asking myself when I'm critiquing, if I'm a firm owner and I'm critiquing my own design?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the first thing that I would say is if you're wondering if your website is in need of any sort of refresh or redesign, don't answer that question yourself. Ask someone on the outside, right? It could be as simple as asking kind of like neutral connections of yours, whether it's friends or anybody else in your same field, that can give you a nice unbiased evaluation of what's working and what's not on the website. But if you have access to professionals that can legitimately tell you, hey, this thing is this structure, to your website or to your pages, or the way that you're presenting yourself, the way that the website is coming across, how easy it is to contact you, how easy it is to find the most crucial information, or perhaps how cluttered the website is. All these things could be getting in the way. A redesign is necessary here. You need to rethink the way that you're presenting yourself and presenting the information that is so valuable to people out there. If you present it in a better way, in a more strategic way, then people are going to react better to it and use it more, and be able to give you more points of contact with new potential clients. If you put it in the hands of professionals, that's the best case scenario, because they will be able to let you know, this website is outdated, it's in need of a redesign. The user experience, maybe it looks good aesthetically, colors, cool imagery, but the user experience is just doesn't have the level of thought, that it requires to give results. So yeah, I think the most important thing is get out of your own head. Don't try to answer that question yourself, because again, we all have biases. And it's one thing that I try to keep in mind always is, for our attorney clients, this is their baby. As I mentioned earlier on, a lot of these folks, a lot of our clients are in stages where they are launching their own thing for the first time. And there's a sense of pride and ownership and care. And when you've arrived at a point like launching a website at some point in your career that you felt was good and that worked in that period of time, you might want to hold on to it a little bit too tightly. And so you should not be the judge of whether something that is meant to stay up to date with trends, technology, designed trends, you should not be the judge of whether that is still effective and relevant. Get out of your mind, get out of your head, put it in the hands of somebody else to tell you it's working, or you need a redesign, or you need a refresh. The core architecture perhaps works. The content is still being presented in good ways. People can easily find ways of contacting you on the website. But just by refreshing maybe something as simple as the hero section of the homepage, that can bring a fresh new identity to the brand. It can be something that gives a second life to a website that still has good bones, to move forward for the next couple of years. So those are points that I would make. It's just get out of your own head, get somebody else's perspective. That's going to give you the most realistic evaluation of whether you need a change or not.
Love it, Diego. That's great advice. Sir, you are a gem. Thank you for joining me today on this and just sort of showing us how design is kind of just the silent partner in your law firm and on your website and working for you. It's either opening the door to new clients or quietly closing it. So thanks for helping us see all this today and giving us some of the insights as to what goes into it.
Absolutely. Always willing to nerd out on design things.
Always. And for you listening out there, if you want to see any of the designs that Diego and the team are working on, you can always head over to our portfolio at themodernfirm.com. But until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.